So let's talk about it. The methods which are declared in an interface needs to be inherited or needs to be overridden in the class which implements that interface. So there is an interface, Database.Batchable, and there is a class, update lead batch. If update lead batch is implementing this interface, then there are three methods which are declared in this interface. All these three methods needs to be overridden in update lead batch as well. We all know about it. So what do we need to do? We need to declare three methods in here. The number one is what? Start. Number two is execute. Number three is what? Finish. But before declaring these three methods, let me explain you what exactly these methods are used for, or why do we actually need to override or define these three methods in this BatchApex class. So the number one is start. Start method is basically used to get all the records from your database on which you want to execute the operation or on which you want to run this transaction. So that's number one, and it gets executed only single time, and that's the first method that we execute whenever we run this BatchApex class. Let's talk about the number two method, which is execute. Execute method gets executed, or execute in execute method we write down the operation that we want to execute onto all of these records. Like imagine if in my case I want to update the annual revenue. So I'll write the logic of updating the annual revenue of all the lead records in the execute method. And this execute method will execute for each batch. So like let's say if there are 10 batches created, then in that case this execute method will execute for 10 times. And if there are 12 or 50 batches that got created, then in that case this execute method will execute will run for 50 times for each of the batch. So that's what the use of second method. And then there is third method, which is finish. Third and the last method, which is finish. Finish is executed at the last. Like when you're completed with the transaction, when you're completed with the update, or when you're done with the operation that you wanted to do on all of these records which you got from start, then after that, if you want to do any post-processing thing, like if you want to send a successful email, or if you want to send an update email to your Salesforce administrator, or if you want to do something else, whatever you want to do before terminating the execution, or before the execution of the BatchApex class gets terminated, you write down that logic in finish method. Most of the time we just use it to send a confirmation email that this BatchApex class got executed perfectly and stuff like that. And it also gets executed only one time. So now let's revise this once again. Three methods. Number one, start. Get all the records from the database. Number two, execute. Execute the operation onto each batch of the records which you got from start. And then the third, finish, which is actually used to write the post-processing logic, or which is basically used to do any do anything that you want to, or which is basically used to notify the users or notify the system administrator that BatchApex class got executed successfully and stuff like that. That's it. Now what are we waiting for? Let's write that program in here. So I'll first start with the start method, because as it said, it's start. So the start method returns database.query locator. I'll explain it to you how and why. And there is database.batchable context. There is a variable that gets passed to all the three methods in order to keep the context of the batch class similar. But for now, I'll write the query. So I want all the read records, all of them. And in my org, let's say I've got like 200,000 records. So in that case, what I'm going to write in here is, first I'm going to write return. Return will basically pass, whenever the start method will get executed, it will pass a reference to the object which will get with the help of database.query locator method. And inside this database.query locator method, we have passed an SQL query, which will return a list of the records on which we need to do this processing, or on which we need to do this operation, right? So this is how you write it down, and then now let's try to save it, and you'll see that instead of three problems, now there are only two problems that are left. Execute and finish are still left. Let's start with the execute one. So to write the execute method, you'll write down it like this: global, and then the return type is void, and then you'll type the name execute, and then again the database.batchable context, and also there will be another parameter which is a list, a lead list, or a list of lead S objects. So because we're gonna get batches in here, and where we're gonna get these batches for inside L list. So if there are 10 batches, then this execute method will get executed 10 times, and for the first batch we'll get all the records. Like let's say if there are 1,000 records, or let's say 100,000 records, and we created a batch of 2,000 each, right? So in that case, the first batch of the 2,000 lead records will come into this L list, and will execute the operation inside the execute method on this L list that we got like as a parameter of this method. So now what do I need to do? I just need to write down the logic for it. Lead L, and I am gonna hold. L dot annual if L dot annual revenue equals to null, then in that case what do you need to do? Annual revenue is equals to, what is it? It's 10,000. I'll make it 100,000. I'll make it 1 million. That's it. So my logic is, if there is a lead whose annual revenue is not set, then in that case you need to set it as 1 million. So I've written the logic in here, and after executing this logic, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call the DML statement, which is update, like this, update L list. So this will call this DML statement for each of the batch, and like that's how the governor limits are not reached. I mean, because of this only the governor limits are not reached. Let's say if we'll call this DML statement onto like 100,000 records at a time, or let's say 200,000 records at a time, it will definitely give you an SQL error or a limit exception. That is, it will reach the governor limits. But what we have done now is we have divided it into multiple chunks, and we are processing each chunk at a time. So we are updating 2,000, then 2,000, then 2,000, then 2,000, then 2,000, then 2,000, and this is the way we are executing onto the complete batch, or onto all of the records which are there in this batch processing, or into this batch process. Now let's create the third method. Third method is very simple, and its name is finish. So we are also about to finish with this batch apex class very soon. So hang on. Okay, this is, yeah, it doesn't return anything like execute, and it's void, and then finish, and then database.batchable context is everywhere, like literally everywhere. And I mean, inside this method, it's not necessary for you to always write down something, but if you want to, you can. Normally what people do is people just write down a confirmation, like a code to send an email, and a confirmation email or something like that. We're also going to do the same thing. So we're going to create a mail in here, and we're going to send it to the user, right? Or yeah, to anyone, to let's say the administrator. Messaging, a single email message. So I've created like an object of a single email message, and in that object I'm gonna write down like to whom I want to send this email. So I'll add multiple addresses into it, 2 addresses inside the 2 addresses. Let's say it's shreysfdc@gmail.com, and then there is this, what do we call it, salesforcehulk@gmail.com. If you do not know about it, then just search it on YouTube, you'll get to know. Salesforce Hulk, right? Then string to addresses, now mail.to address, mail.set to address, to addresses. I just need to pass a list of string in here. To address, set subject, batch job is completed, congratulations. So in here, what I've done is I've just created a messaging.single email message like object, and then I've created a string, a list of string in which I've entered the email addresses where I want to send this email, and then I've set it to mail. I've set it in this mail single email message object with the help of set to addresses method, and then I've set the subject for this email. Congratulations, batch job is completed. And then I've set the text in the body, so basically the body of the email, which is, hey, the batch job that you started is successfully executed, now go home and relax. You cannot go home for now. You still need to know how to execute this batch apex. So now I'll try to just save this. And earlier there was an error. Okay, now I think there's still an error. Let me see what that error is. Oh, there is a mistake that I've done in this annual revenue. Yeah, like in this, in writing the name, writing the API name of the annual revenue field. And I'll just hit save. Yeah, now it's saved. So there's no problem if you can see in here. And yeah, the batch apex is saved. So that's how you need to write down the batch apex class. First, you create a global class, implement the database.batchable interface, and then after that you have to create 3 methods: start, execute, and finish, like this. But that's not it. You still need to execute this batch apex, don't you? Of course you want to, but before that, don't you want to see the records which are already there into the database for or in the object lead? Let's go ahead and have a look. So it's already open. So I'll go to all open leads. I'll just open them all, and yeah, here are all the leads. So I've got 17 leads. There is no need to execute a batch apex class on 17 lead records. But yeah, I've got a developer edition and I've got only these 17 records. But no matter how many records you've got, you can execute the operation with the help of batch apex. But currently, I'm just showing it to you with the help of only 17 records. And these are the 17 records that I've got. So annual revenue is there for Bertha Boxer. It's there for Jeff Blims. It's there for Patricia. Not for everyone else. So let's execute our batch apex class and let's see how it will update all the records. Update the annual revenue field for the records where annual revenue is equals to null. So I'll just go to debug, click on open execute anonymous, and I'm going to write down a particular code, and you have to pay close attention to what exactly I'm writing down in here. So I just first have to create an object of this BatchApex class. So what's the name of the BatchApex class? Update lead batch, and then I have to update lead batch ULB, that's it. And then, so how to create an object of a class? Just with the help of a with the help of the new keyword and calling the constructor of it and assigning its reference to the reference variable, which is ULB in this particular case. And now you have to write down a method which we use to execute a batch operation, and that is database.execute batch. And inside this we have to pass ULB as the parameter, and that's it. That's all what you have to write down in order to execute a batch apex operation. And I'll just click on execute. It got executed. Yeah, it was successful, I think. Let's just see in the lead records, right? So we'll just refresh the records that we got. See, all the records which were null, where the annual revenue was null earlier, now they've got 1 million as annual revenue. This is how your batch apex works. And there is one thing that you need to note down while working with batch apex. There is no strict order of the execution of the batches. Like, it's not like if you've got 10,000 records in an SQL query ordered in a particular format, the first batch will get executed first and the second batch will execute it first. It can be in any order. So the order of the execution of the batches is not guaranteed by Salesforce. This database.execute batch method is like, there are two versions of database.execute batch method. Number one is a database.execute batch, and then you just pass the object of that data of that batch apex class. And the next one is you pass another parameter with it, like let's say 100. So this is the size of the chunk, or this is the size of the batch that you're passing in here. So if you want to execute it for 100 records, then in that case just pass 100. If you want to execute it for 200 records at a time, then just pass 200. Whatever number suits you, you can just pass it over. Pass that number over here.